2010 New York, April 18th, Dennytown Road south to South Highland Road. We are back in New York and out for a late hike on the Appalachian Trail around 4 o'clock. It is a cold and cloudy day as we started our hike in a mostly hardwood forest. It has been a while since our last hike, and we were moving rather slowly. We had set up our backpacking site at the AT Group campsite that I had seen on the AT map. The site is in a grassy area right next to Dennytown Road. We headed south from our tent site. The site is on the AT. I found a cross with the words Jesus on it when we started our hike that was laying in the middle of the trail. We met a backpacker and told him that there was no water at the campground. The water at the site was shut off. We reached South Highland Road at around 7 o'clock and found a stick cross on the side of the road that was a memorial for a hiker named Rick. A sign asked other hikers to pray for him because this is where he left this life here on Earth. This section of the trail looked grown in and had gone through some wetland areas. We walked the road back to our campsite and had passed several houses on the road. At one of the houses, someone came outside to look at us as we walked by. April 19th, South Highland Road south to the Graymoor Monastery. We left our bikes in the woods at the Graymoor Monastery and drove to South Highland Road where we left off yesterday. I picked up the cross that I had found in the middle of the trail and put it at the memorial near the road. The trail again went through a wetland area with a swamp, skunk cabbages, and lots of gnats. I saw some marsh marigolds, trout lilies, violets, dandelions, and small purple flower, which I did not know. Spring was in the air, and we heard the mating calls of the spring peeper. Then we entered a hardwood area that was not very scenic. The day was mostly cloudy, windy, and cold in the morning. It was all up from Canopus Hill Road, then it became sunny during our climb. With no wind, the temperatures was going up, and there was no shade as the trees had no leaves. The gnats were all over our face. They bit my forehead just under the rim of my hat. Ouch. We reached Canopus Hill Vista with a view of rich homes before descending to Chapman Road and then some PUDs to a view of some distant mountains. The spring greenery was back, and we found a blue blaze trail that we explored. It went up to another view with no trespassing signs that were posted on the trees. We were not sure if it was for the woods along the side of the trail or if it was for the view at the top. We found a beautiful area and we saw blue blazes all the way up. A statue of a beautiful Mother Mary was inside a small wood building with a glass door. The signs up here were in Spanish. I believe that this trail was some kind of pilgrim's walk seeking for forgiveness or forgive thanks or pray to find inner peace. It had a great view, the best view on the trail so far. It looked like someone had taken this spot off the AT to have it for themselves and marked it with no trespassing signs, as the signs were posted everywhere up here. We returned to the AT and the trail became wider and much easier to walk. No rocks, not even small rocks, like the trail was cleared for an easy walking trail. We reached the Graymoor Monastery. Graymoor is a retreat destination and pilgrimage site for people of all faiths. The Franciscan Friars of the Atonement, who run the monastery, offered free meals and overnight stays to hikers from 1974 to 1994. The monastery hosted hikers on the Appalachian Trail, but due to increased traffic on the trail, the monastery stopped offering free meals and overnight stays. Through hikers are now directed to a side trail that leads to a pavilion by a ball field. We had asked one of the friars if hikers could stay here, but he told us that they had stopped allowing this about 8 to 10 years ago. He told us that they no longer feed them anymore too. The friar was pretty nasty, not very Christian-like. He did tell us that they allow through hikers to camp in the ball field during the night near the picnic shelter. We checked out the shelter, and it had an outside shower facet that was attached to a garden hose for hikers to shower with. But this is shut down after hiker season. The picnic table had menus for hikers to call for pizza from a local pizza restaurant. We reached the bikes and rode them on Albany Post Road back to South Highland Road. It was a nice ride in the afternoon sun, warm but not hot. We passed by a lot of very wealthy homes, a field with some horses on it, and we found some old abandoned houses that I just love to explore. April 20th, Dennytown Road north to Route 301. We slept in late today because it was so cold outside and it was warm in the sleeping bag. Dave had lit the sterno can inside the tent to warm it up, but it was low on fuel and just went out shortly after he lit it. So it was still cold in here, and we just did not want to get out of the sleeping bags. It was a cold night with the wind blowing, which came in from the bottom of the tent. I heard owls all night, as I did not sleep very well. One was near the tent, and the other was in the distance. I just love the sound of owls in the night. This site also had some crickets and a lot of songbirds in the morning. We left the campsite at around 10 o'clock and got onto the trail from our campsite. The trail climbed through a hardwood forest. It was a sunny day with temperatures in the 70s and no wind, so the gnats were all over us again, and our energy was drained after yesterday's hike. We reached a beautiful hemlock forest with a small waterfall, and we saw a big black snake. We believe that it might have been a water moccasin. Then the trail went into a wetland area with a large red grass swamp before it climbed up surprisingly hard in this heat. We saw more people on the trail today, a day hiker, and then a couple that was hiking and a backpacker. The trail walked an old railroad bed with integrate stonework. At first, we did not know if it was an old road or an old railroad track. Then we found another trail that was called the Railroad Trail, or the Old Mine Trail, going to a mine. We had seen some beautiful red trillium, some trout lily, and some wood anemone in his area, and we saw a couple of garter snake. The trail had some PUDs before we reached Route 301. This was our destination for today, so we turned around and headed back. We were going to take the railroad trail back to our campsite, but when we reached it, we found a sign that said that it was closed for reforestation, so we continued to the intersection of the lake trail. One of the hikers that we saw earlier walking toward us told us that he had come from the lake trail, had said that the dam had broken, but that the trail was still passable, so we had planned on returning on the lake trail. But when we reached the junction, we saw a sign that said that the lake trail was closed due to dangerous conditions. We got onto the lake trail, and it was passable. It was a different trail with different scenery. The trail was nice and smooth, no PUDs, and it had several small dams that were broken. However, we had no trouble getting around them. We saw some white birch trees here, unusual for New York. New York does have different ground cover that we do not see in Connecticut. We went down a long rock ledge, long for this area, and came out to an interesting ruins. This ruin looked the same as the one that we had seen in Pennsylvania. This section was more flat than the AT, so we made very good time, and it was 4 o'clock when we stopped here. April 21st, Route 301 north to Hortontown Road. Last night, as we were relaxing, a woman was walking her dog on the road, past us, and gave us a nasty look. Shortly after the police arrived, as we were getting ready to get into the tent for the night, and he questioned us. We told him that we were hiking the AT and was camping here. Our car was parked near the field, and he told us that a truck was here while we were hiking to deliver the porta potties here. But our car was parked in the way. He let us stay the night, but told us that we had to leave in the morning. This morning, the park ranger arrived and checked on us, and we told him that we were leaving today. After that, the sheriff department arrived, and we also told him that we were leaving today. He told us that there was a bear sighted in this area and that he was just checking on us to make sure that we were okay. We did not know where we were going to spend the night today and was thinking about doing a backpacking trip. We tried to look for a bike route back to our car that would be off the Taconic Parkway. However, the road went way out of the way and it was very steep. We decided to drive to the RPH shelter, which is near Hortontown Road. We are splitting again, so I dropped off Dave and he is heading south and I'm going back to Route 301 and heading north. My side started straight off with a climb to a ridge line above Canopus Lake, but it was all grown in so there was no view of the lake. The trail was all hardwoods with tons of invasive plants like barberry bushes and multiflora rose bushes. There was more here than we have back at home. I passed an area that had a stone wall border with lots of blow-down trees for some reason. The trail was totally covered with tree branches. I reached the lake overlook and then descended and saw Dave starting to climb up. We stopped before the climb to eat our lunch. We were so happy to see each other. It is always sad when we have to separate. We separated again, and I found that his area was much more scenic and was mostly in the pine forest, and there was great views here. I reached the Shenandoah Mountain campsite, and it was a very nice area. It was an open field for tents with many flowering trees. There was a garage here that was locked. It looked like at one time that there was a house here. I had thought that they should use the garage as a shelter for hikers. At the top of a ridge line, I had a great view with an American flag painted on the rocky ridge. A couple were making out on the ridge, and I tapped my poles on the rock to let them know that they were not alone. The guy rolled off of her. They had shorts on, but it looked like they were doing it through their shorts. There was an impressive amount of cedar trees on this section of the trail. I found some fur here, maybe from a raccoon. This entire part of the New York section had lots of wild chives growing everywhere. I also saw some red trout lilies, wild columbine, and more of those white wood anemone. It was a nice, peaceful afternoon with temperatures in the 70s and pleasant with low humidity and very few bugs, as it was not swampy like some parts of the trail was. Some other couple walking a dog on the trail toward the end of my hike, but no other hikers today. This section of the trail has had the best views and scenery on this trip. I reached the RPH shelter, where I am hoping that we will be staying at tonight. It is a brick-style shelter with a concrete floor and 6 bunk beds and a small table. It will be the first time that we had ever stayed the night inside a shelter, but if it has a lot of people in it, we will probably set up the tent in the field. The tent can get wet inside in the morning due to condensation. It is also difficult to get dressed in the tent, as it is rather cramped inside, and of course we have to set it up and take it down, so it might be nice to sleep in the shelter. Dave arrived, and we had our dinner at the shelter. I read the logbook and found that a youth group of 20 youths had stayed here last night. We were glad that we had missed them. The wind had picked up, and we heard a rumble of thunder in the distance. So the shelter is looking better for stay the night inside. April 22nd, Route 52 south to Hosmer Mountain Road. It was our first night in a shelter. Luckily, we had the shelter to ourselves. The shelter was near a road, but was quiet last night, and we did not have ant mice encounter, which was good. I slept on the top buck next to a window, like I did when I was a kid, and I fell asleep as I watched it get dark. We had our breakfast here and headed out for our last hike on this trip. This will be a short hike on our last day on the trail. We started this hike, Route 52, and it was only a 3-mile hike out and back. The trail started with a steep descent and then a steep climb. It was humid today and much warmer than it has been the other days. It was a good thing we got out early on this hike because it was very hot on the climb up with no shade through a hardwood forest. We descend and then began our climb. The map showed a viewpoint on this section, however, it was all grown in. We could hear Interstate 84 the entire hike up, and we saw no wildlife on this section. We descended steeply and crossed a nice footbride before we reached Hosmer Mountain Road. We knew we would have to climb back up to return to our car. This was a tedious section, but it is part of the AT, so it had to be done. We stopped for break on the way back at a romantic stone circle with a stone bench. The gnats were out, so we did not stay very long here.